Hi, and welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to be revisiting some of my earlier class-related videos, clearing up a few issues and bringing them forward in relation to using the character wizard to create them. The intent is to take my older, longer versions of the videos where I initially covered the Druid classes in combination with a class specialization, with much shorter videos that explain just the base class. This will allow me to remove those longer videos as I begin to replace the specific class specializations covered in that video with their shorter counterparts. In this short 4-part series, I will explain what the base Druid class is and go through the process of creating a character that uses this class. I will then cover each level's individual features and show how they can be used and configured within your character sheet for various situations. So let's begin with explaining what a Druid is in relation to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A Druid is a class whose goal is to preserve the balance of nature, accepting that both goodness and cruelty are required to do so. This does not mean they like cruelty, but they simply accept that it has to exist as part of the balance to ensure that all natural life can live in harmony with nature. As a result, they might choose to ignore the existence of an evil overlord if they are somehow in balance with an opposing force, and they will work to maintain that balance, preventing any one side from gaining an advantage over the other. How they do this is entirely up to them, but they will also look into using the 4 forces of nature, specifically earth, air, fire, and water, to help them achieve that goal if they can. Their goal is to always ensure the balance, as it contributes to the circle of life. Evil begets death, but death, or the decay of the dead, feed life in a never-ending circle, for example. However, they do abhor the unnatural, such as the undead and aberrations, things that break the order of nature and do nothing towards maintaining that balance of nature. Creatures of this nature do not keep that balance in place, because an undead creature is essentially evil incarnate. Because of that, they don't function the way that nature expects it to, because it doesn't feed growth. Instead, it maintains decay and it essentially poisons the land around it. And the same can be said with respect to aberrations, but in this case, they are geared more towards an aberration being a corruption of a beast, or the creation of something that simply violates all natural laws. For example, a beholder. They use these powers to keep an eye on and maintain the lands around them, only coming into towns when needed, or to warn that something's going to happen that will upset that balance, but only if the event would tip the nature of things out of balance. Druids are more than capable of letting an entire village be completely destroyed, especially if they feel it will rebalance the lands around them. It does not mean that they would take a hand in that particular destruction, they just simply would not help. For instance, if the people of a village was excessively logging the forest around the immediate area, and it was having a detrimental effect on those lands in that area, they might not lend a hand if the entire village is burnt to the ground. But let's move on to other aspects of the class that are important. The 2 remaining topics really are around their spellcasting capabilities, as well as the fact that they can naturally shapeshift without the use of spells. And that shapeshifting allows them to take some form of a natural beast. Specific kinds, there's a limit to it, but they still have that capability, such as wolves, bears, and as they become more powerful, those beasts that can swim and fly, such as fish and falcons and eagles. They also take on a class specialization at level 2, and these are called circles, such that the circle of the land or the circle of the moon would be 2 examples of what a specialization is for the Druid class. And you can probably guess, but these are named to represent the cyclical nature of the natural order, where life eventually dies, but death eventually creates growth. So let's move on to a few other aspects of this class. A Druid is a spellcasting class. Because of this, they function very much like a cleric with respect to their primary stat, making it a wisdom-based ability score. And that is because it's going to affect their spellcasting capabilities. It also contributes to the character's primary skills. However, because of their close ties to nature, they also focus on constitution and/or intelligence for their secondary and tertiary ability scores. Their constitution helps to ensure the survivability of themselves, not because of any skills, but simply because of the total number of hit points that they are going to gain. Additionally, it also helps to contribute towards resisting distractions, i.e. making concentration checks, while they are spellcasting or while they are maintaining spells. Whereas the intelligence ability score helps with their saving throws. The 2 important abilities with respect to saving throws are wisdom and intelligence, as those are the 2 that a character gains proficiency in, specifically for the saving throws. With respect to who is going to love this class, pretty much anyone is going to really love being able to play this particular character. However, those who love the ideas of being able to take on the forms of natural beasts, such as wolves, bears, some flying creatures, and even swimming creatures, are going to be the ones who really thoroughly enjoy this class. The spellcasting aspect of it is really just a bonus on top of that capability, simply because it gives you some additional flexibility, or it will give you some additional flexibility with respect to what the character can do. But having that freedom to run around the woods as a wolf or a bear, or fly high over the trees as an eagle or a falcon, has a high appeal to a lot of players, myself included, though I have yet to actually play a druid. However, the circles themselves do provide enough flexibility and options, if you will, that will allow anyone really to enjoy playing any kind of druid that they want. And to determine whether you yourself are really going to enjoy playing a druid, it's highly recommended that you just simply play one, see what happens. The class isn't going to bite, it's not going to hurt you in any way, shape, or form, you just may not enjoy it if you don't like that kind of capability. So that's the worst thing that could happen. Unfortunately, the Druid class does not gain as many class specialization options as the Cleric or the Wizards do, even though Druids are spellcasters. However, when you consider that some of the spells they gain are clerical in nature, while others are derived from nature directly or specifically from different schools of wizardry, we can understand a little bit as to why that is. Druids are a good example of how to combine the offensive concepts of a wizard with the healing capabilities of a cleric, and in a lot of ways, this lends itself, I should say, towards being able to provide a reduced set of class specializations, thus condensing a lot of that capability into a smaller subset. At the time of this recording, there are a total of 7 circles that a player can choose from. 2 of those circles are provided by the player's handbook, 2 others are provided by Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and the remaining 3 are all provided by Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, although it does contain one that was initially introduced with Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. The circles that have been introduced with the player's handbook are called the Circle of the Land and the Circle of the Moon, while the circles of Spores, Stars, Wildfire, Dreams, and of the Shepherd are all introduced by the remaining supplements. Of course, this obviously assumes that no new Druid classes have been introduced since this video has been published. If you would like to see all of those class specializations, feel free to use the link in the description below to take you to the Fantasy Grounds forum posting where I have been managing the listing of all Druid Circle videos that I have recorded. With that, let's move on to the creation of a level 1 Druid class character.